Hi there, it's Nicole Spohr with another Stamptember video. Today I am showcasing the Hero Arts Park Scene stamp set. This is the exclusive limited edition for 2020 from Hero Arts, which creates all kinds of cute little park scenes with this 4 by 5 3/4 inch clear stamp set. And I'm going to create a very easy one-layer card and watercolor this with some of the Karin Brushmarker Pro markers. So we're going to start with a 4 by 5 1/4 inch panel of Bristol smooth cardstock. And we're going to be building a tree, the landscape, and then filling in with some flowers, the person on the bike, and the birds, and then some greetings. I want to lay out my stamps first to kind of make sure I have room for everything, and then also I'm going to need to mask the tree trunk there so that the line of the landscape isn't going through it. And instead of stamping a mask, I'm actually just going to kind of make one up with some post-it tape, and I'll show you that here in a second. Just something that'll work because we're doing a little no-line coloring. It's going to be pretty easy to mask if I don't get, or kind of camouflage, I guess I want to say, the fact that if it doesn't stamp perfectly. The first thing we want to stamp in this scene is the tree trunk itself. And I love that there's some options here. So you can stamp the top of the tree like I'm going to do and fill out the tree, or you can do individual leaves with solid inks if you want to as well. And then you can stamp the landscape, you can mix in the other tree if you want to. There's lots of options. Plus there's a park bench and a light and several different sentiments. So you can really build a lot of different scenes with this stamp set. Next, I am going to start coloring in, and I actually started coloring with olive green and lime green along the front of the landscape here. And I'm going to pull that color out with my lighter marker that I laid down against the dark line of that landscape pretty far down before I go ahead and grab my water brush pen that has some water in it. And we're going to watercolor that color the rest of the way down to just kind of give it that beautiful ombre effect of dark to light. Because we are using some water here, you want to make sure that you're not coloring next to anything that is wet with your markers or water brush pen for the next area, because you don't want that color to migrate to that area. Or you want to let it dry before you start on the next spot, or use a heat tool to heat that first. I did watercolor in the sky, and I didn't realize my camera was not on, so I apologize, but I scribbled the sky blue marker on my glass mat, and then I'm picking the color up and applying it to the background. The reason I do that is if you try to color the background first, you're going to get a harsh line wherever you add that color, and I really didn't want that for the sky. So it's easier to lay the color on an acrylic block, a glass work surface, some sort of a palette, and then add a little water to it and pick it up and paint it on like you would a watercolor, because you can see that green line of the landscape, how it's really dark. I wanted that there, but I did not want that for the sky. The sky is dry, the landscape is dry, so now I'm going to go ahead and color in the tree, and I'm going to start by just kind of tracing out the tree. Some of the areas on my card I used water, some I did not. It really just kind of depended on what I was coloring. In this case, it was super important that the sky was completely dry. I used a lot more water there than I'm using anywhere else because I was picking the color up and painting it on. So once it is dry, I'm going to just kind of trace out the tree, trace out that shape. I stamped my images with the Fawn Jellyfish No Line Coloring ink, so it's super light. Kind of just going to fade into the card, but it still allows you to have a fantastic outline to follow if you want to do no line coloring. Then instead of adding water here, I'm actually going to blend out with my lime green marker. I traced it with olive green, and I'm going to just kind of trace, or pardon me, blend out that color into the rest of the tree, avoiding the tree trunk as much as possible. I've also chosen to really try to consciously make the effort to color things that are lighter first. In this case, the green is going to be lighter than the brown because I don't want to accidentally touch the brown and pull it out into the green of the tree. That really wouldn't be the worst thing for this particular image, but let's say you're coloring something with reds and you color the red first and then you try to do yellow. Often it will just migrate to other areas. I know when I color with the zigs, that happens a lot. So I really try to keep red to the last so you're not touching it and dragging that color. Same thing goes here. These are, I don't know about red, but these aren't quite as finicky about that as the Zig Clean Color Real Brush markers. But it's kind of a habit for me now for the most part, just because I've had so many problems in the past where red tries to just migrate everywhere all over a card. And that can also happen with some other dark colors, so I made sure and colored the green of the tree first. This is also going to be great because any of those little delicate places on this tree, those branches up there, I can if any green covered those up, I can kind of draw those back in. Before I get to the tree trunk, I am going to do the field down here along the landscape just to kind of give the tree a chance to dry a little bit. We're using some gold, almond, and sandstone inks. Again, for the most part, I am keeping this to markers only and not really pulling in a lot of water brush pen. I think I used maybe just a little in the larger yellow area of the background. One thing I really love about these Karin Brushmarker Pro markers is the tip on these is super fine and so good. I love the tips on these markers. They really work beautifully, especially in small little areas and things. Just really fun to use. I'm trying to use them more, show you more examples with them, because they are still fairly new to me, but so far I really love them. Now we're going to go in with Cocoa and draw in that tree trunk, draw in any of those little small branches up in the top. This really was a super quick and easy card as well. Sometimes just a nice little one-layer card is just what you need, and this one was super fun to stamp and create. I love the Hero Arts Heroscapes stamp sets, which are a lot of color layering type of sets where you can build a scene. And while this one isn't a color layering set per se, you don't really layer, different solid inks or anything. It's more of an outline type of stamp set. It's got that same feel to it where you build a scene, and I love that about this set. Then we're going to take some sandstone and pull out that darker ink a little bit, and we almost have all the coloring done. So very, very little coloring, and yet you still get this completely colorful background. The last thing I have are like the bushes that are back behind that little field image. And I am going to color those with a couple of different colors of green. And then we're going to make sure all of our background is completely dry before we stamp on the rest of our images and sentiment. So this is a little lush green and sulfur yellow. I know it says yellow, but really, to me, this is lime green, but I guess that other marker I used was called lime green. Who knows? I go more from what the color looks like than the name, because I think the names can be a little misleading at times. And we're going to just color that in. And then we're going to take our background back to our MISTI so that we can stamp all of the little silhouette images for our card. So the silhouette images we have today, or that I'm using from the stamp set, are the birds and the person on the bike and the flower stems. And I decided to customize the flower stems, which ended up being one of my favorite things about this card. And I'll show you that here in a second. I felt like the card needed something else. So I kind of laid out the rest of what I'm going to need for the design. And I'm going to use some VersaFine ONYX black ink to stamp the birds and the cyclist. And I'm using the MISTI because even stamping this ink, and it's such a good solid black ink, once I felt like it wasn't quite dark enough, so I stamped it twice to really get that nice dark color. And then you can kind of tell, even now, I felt like the left side of the card is a little light. The sentiments are all going to go here on the right side. We have the birds, we have the cyclist, and I wanted something else. Plus, I wanted a pop of color. If you guys have followed me for a while, you know one of my favorite tips is to add in some red. And I kind of thought I'll add a red heart accent, but even at that isn't giving me what I want over here on the left side of the card. So I opted to take the little flower stems, which they're little flowers, but they have the little dot up at the top. I thought it would be fun to go ahead and color in my own little flower shape around there. So we're totally going to customize that, and I'll show you that here in a second. I'm going to stamp the "You're in my life" phrase, and then above that I'm going to stamp "So thankful." I'm going to tell you one of my very, very favorite things about this stamp set is the fonts used in the greetings are great. You can use these even with other stamp sets. So on a scrap piece of Bristol cardstock, I kind of just stamped the blooms with second generation, and I'm playing around with some floral shapes to try to decide what I want to do. And I opted to just kind of do a little 5-petal flower. I think that's going to be the most simple, easy. Let's go ahead and stamp the rest of our sentiment, and then we're going to color in our own little custom blooms with a pop of red. And I'm going to use the Fire Red Karin Brushmarker Pro marker to do that. And we're just going to do all of them in red because that's going to give a nice little pop of color to an otherwise kind of flat scene. And it's so funny what a huge difference this makes. So just going around each of those little dots, and look how cute those little flowers are. It's such a small thing. I'm always amazed at how a tiny little change can make such a big impact. Then we're going to take a little red heart accent and pop it right above our sentiments. And then take the whole panel and adhere it to a white top fold card base. And that is going to be it for this very clean and simple 1-layer park scene card featuring the Says Stamp and Hero Arts STAMPtember limited edition exclusive stamp set called Park Scene. The supplies I used to create my card are listed and linked below the video here on YouTube. Here are a couple more videos featuring Says Stamp STAMPtember that you might be interested in. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and be sure to subscribe to my channel and hit that notification bell to never miss a new card making video. Thank you so much for joining me today, and we'll see you next time.